Shalom Aleichem. Can you hear me now? Just want to introduce you to two things. First of all, I apologize for being delayed. Marv is getting later, and therefore I'm getting delayed. The second thing, and I have to share this with a great sense of enthusiasm, is my wife has a cousin who lives in Ofakim, and she has a son who's just finished 12th grade. Now, when you all finished 12th grade, what did you do to celebrate? Maybe you went out for pizza. Maybe you were a little holier, so you spent the night learning as a big celebration. So he made a Siyum Shas Bavli. Wait, let me just say that again. I was at his bris 18 years ago. I remember it well. It was just before we got married. We were just engaged. Amichai Yaakov Fried, who lives in Ofakim. Right now, as we're speaking, if you want, I can do screen sharing, and I'll show you the link of Zoom that the family have to show you this. Right now, as we speak, is making a Siyum Shas Bavli. Now, I'm trying to work out how he did it, because that means that roughly he's going to have to have started at Bar Mitzvah and done 2 daf a day every day, including Friday and Shabbos. That doesn't add up. I'm trying to do daf yomi, panting to keep up with daf yomi. And how is this boy who is 18? Now, if that wasn't exciting enough, he's the second one in the family. His older brother, Ido, also did it 3 years ago when he finished. That's a Masoret tam. So I guess if it's a Masoret, it's an easy thing to do. You just, the brother did it, I'll do it too. Siyum Shas Bavli at age 18. Now, I didn't say that to discourage anybody here, but rather to give you hope for your children in the future. If you raise your children in Israel, this is what you can expect of Gadlus, how your children can be raised. Siyum Shas Bavli. That's the way he celebrated finishing school. What's he going to do now? Chazara, I guess. He's going to go to yeshiva and yeah, I've learned everything already. Thanks. Okay, that was just the end of the very exciting halavai by all of us. We are in a Mishnah, which I believe will take us more than one day to finish, because we started it last time and now we're still in it, and we're definitely not going to get anywhere near finishing it today. Chamisha Talmidim Hayu l'Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. We're in the middle of Perek Sheni, in the middle of Mishnah Ches. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 Talmidim. Ve'elu hein, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, Hu haya moneh shivchan, and he would list their praises. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus bor sud she'eno ma'abed tipa. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus was a plastered pit, which is obviously the praise that you want to give your child, a plastered pit that doesn't lose a drop. Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, ashrei yoladato, how fortunate is his mother who gave birth to him. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Chosid, Rabbi Shimon ben Natana Yerechet, Rabbi Elazar ben Rach, Ke'amayana mitgaber. And then it goes on. I'm not going to even read that part today. We'll get to that part tomorrow, or the day after. So let's go through this Mishnah and ask basic, simple questions as we go through. Question number 1. Chamisha Talmidim hayu l'Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Chamisha Talmidim. We learned last time that he lived until 120 years old. He was a businessman for the first 40 years. He learned for the next 40 years, and then he taught Torah for the next 40 years. He started teaching Torah before Chorban Bayit Sheni. He founded the yeshiva. Yeshiva in Yavne existed, but he gave strength to the yeshiva in Yavne. And once Rabbi Gamliel was appointed Nasi, he went and founded other yeshivas in the south, maybe where this Amichai Yaakov Fried right now is making a siyum. So he went and found the yeshivas. He had definitely had more than 5 Talmidim. So why does the Mishnah say he had 5 Talmidim? There's obviously something very special about these 5 Talmidim. We're trying to figure out what that is. So it then lists the 5 Talmidim, and then he starts to praise them. Now, there's 2 things which are problematic with this. Number 1 is, why is he praising them? What is the purpose of the Mishnah telling us this? If it was something personal between him and them, then that's fine. I'm happy that he did that. It was great encouragement for them. And maybe that is the general message, that every Rebbe should always praise his Talmidim and build them. And that's definitely a true point. But why does our Mishnah, as a Masorah for all time, a message for all eras, need to list for us the specific praises that he would give to his Talmidim? Why is that relevant for us? Why is that important? So what's the relevance of being Moneh Shivcham? If you want to say their teachings, fine, go ahead and say it. But what is this idea? Even the bit I didn't read is even more strange. You're weighing them up. If they were all on one side and he was on the other side, and if they were all on the one side and he was on the other side, what is the concept here? What is the idea of the praise? And also the word, specifically the word moneh. Moneh is an inappropriate word, not inappropriate, just a not relevant word here. if normally you would say he was mesaper shivchan, he would tell their praise, or he was magid shivchan. But moneh is to list, it's to count. Like if you're having a carnival and you have an amount of candies in a jar and you want to know how many there are, so you're trying to count them quickly from the outside with your eye so you can guess and maybe win. What is counting shivchan? It's not a correct word. You don't count praises. It's just not. So why does it say that? Why doesn't it say tell the praises? So question number one, why does it say 5? Question number 2, why is he bichlal praising them in the Mishnah? Why is the Mishnah listing their praises? Question number 3, what is the word moneh? The idea of counting a praise. That word is strange. Now, when we go through the individual praises, they're pretty strange. Not the kind of things you would typically think you would praise someone for. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, bor sud, he's a container, not a vessel, but rather a pit, which is plastered. She'einu ma'abed tipa. So it seems like he's saying that he absorbs all the Torah that he says, but that's not the best parable to give. I would probably say a flask, because a flask, you put the water in, you close it, and it's sealed. Here it's going to evaporate. It's an open pit. How is an open pit valuable? And also the repetition, bor sud, she'einu ma'abed tipa. What's it adding by saying einu ma'abed tipa? If the whole point of saying a word stays in, meaning he absorbs all the information, then what's the extra phrase of einu ma'abed tipa? That's the question on him. I don't know if we're going to answer these questions today, but we'll get a start. Question on Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya is it's not bichlal a praise for him. Ashrei yoladato, how fortunate is his mother? Very nice. His mother was a great woman. But why aren't you saying what's unique about him? What makes him special? So Chazal too tell us an amazing thing about his mother, just to give her credit. 2 things that Chazal tell us about her. Number 1, anyone who is in Shana Gimel will remember that I quoted this once upon a time. Eli Bogo, you'll remember that I quoted this once. So number 1 is that his mother, when she was expecting him, then she would go to all the Batei Midrash in her town, which was 63 Batei Midrash, and she would ask the Talmud Chacham to please pray that her son will grow up to be a Talmud Chacham. So she had a lot of inspiration and a word with the boss above that all the Talmud Chacham were praying for her son. And then once he was born, she had his carriage always in the base Midrash, which anyone who was there 3 years ago that's a while back, when Yisrael Moshe was born, then it was Musa Seder, and I brought his entire carriage up to the Ezras Nashim, so that when we had Musa Seder together, he was there to listen, and he was there to absorb the holy words of Torah. My wife wasn't so keen. It's not recommended for Shalom Bayis, but look at this boy coming today. Right now he's in a biting stage of other children, but once he gets past that stage, you will see he'll be a great Talmid Chacham Be'ezrat Hashem. So what is I understand why it's praising his mother. Wonderful. Very good. She really deserves it, but it's still not a praise for him. It's a praise for his mother. So why is that the phrase? Rabbi Yosef Kohen Chosid. That's a good phrase. Chosid is a lovely one. We're happy with that one, but it's just very, very general, very broad. Not something unique and something special about him. Rabbi Yishon ben Natanel is much more challenging. Yireh Chet. Yireh Chet is a basic. That's something which you would expect every Tana and every Amora to have. We said earlier on a few Mishnayos ago, Ein bor Yireh Chet. Ein bor Yireh Chet, we said on Mishnah Hey, meaning a bor can't be Yireh Chet. But once you're past the stage of bor, like you're an Amaretz, then you can be. And Amaretz can't be a Chassid. So it's a praise for Rabbi Yosef Kohen. Not that it justifies him being this special Talmud, but it does explain that he's something special, unique. But Rabbi Shimon ben Natanel, Yireh Chet, that's not something special at all. Anyone who's an Amaretz is expected to be a Yireh Chet. So why is his praise a praise of being a Yireh Chet? Rabbi Raza ben Arach is a Mayana Mitkaber. That we just have to explain what that means. And if that does mean that he's constantly renewing Torah, then how does that compare to the first praise of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, which was something which seemed to be the exact opposite? Which is a good one? Is he praising someone who retains everything they learn and aren't machadish anything, which is what a pit represents? All the water that goes in stays there. Or is he praising someone like Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, who doesn't retain anything? He's a constant flow, but new things are always coming out, but there's no retention of what was past. So it seems like it's contradicting what he values, what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai values in Talmidim, having 2 contradictory ideas. So that was a bit of the background of all the questions. So I'm going to just give a little bit of history of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus. This is most interesting and enjoyable, and then we'll go back and start answering the questions. Who was Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus? So Stam Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus in the Mishnah, Stam Rabbi Eliezer. Anytime in the Mishnah you have Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus. Also the second one, Stam Rabbi Yoshua, whenever you have Rabbi Yoshua's name mentioned in the Mishnah, that's referring to this Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, and they were both the Talmidim of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus. Unfortunately, the other three we don't hear so much about. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, we have a very, very infrequent mention in the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon Tanel never mentioned in the Mishnah. And Rabbi Elazar ben Arach never mentioned in the context of halacha in the Mishnah. He's taught with a very strange and interesting story, which I will relate when we get to that stage, although I'm still struggling to understand the message. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkonus was born at the time of the Churban Beis Hamikdash. His father Hurkonus was one of the richest men, one of the what they then called Gedolei Hador, not because he was a big Kamacham, but he was very wealthy and influential. He had fields, and his son Eliezer would work in the fields with the workers. He was 28 years old, and his father found him crying in the fields. This, by the way, if you're interested in a good read on a Shabbos afternoon, is found in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which Rabbi Eliezer himself wrote. It's the first two prakim where he tells his own story before he goes into telling the Torah that he has to teach. So he was 28 years old and crying. He cries a lot in the next few scenes. So his father, Hurkonus, comes to him and says to him, Beni, Eliezer Beni, why are you crying? He didn't answer. So he said, maybe it's because you don't want to work at this part of the field, you want to work with this tool. So he moved him to the tool, and then he was still crying. And he says, Beni, why are you crying? And he said, I want to learn Torah. So his father was pitying him, and he says, you don't know anything. You have no clue of anything in Torah. Look, if you really want to learn Torah, you're a lost case. He doesn't use those words, but the implication is you're a lost cause. But if you get married and you have children, you can send your children to learn Torah, which is a major misconception that people feel that I will never be able to finish Shas, but maybe my child, who will be raised in the Zilberman method, he will be able to finish Shas at a certain stage. And although that's a tremendous belief you should have, but it shouldn't be at the expense of. Recently, we were at my brother-in-law's Siyam Shas, Dotan, and I said to Hananya, Be'ezrat Hashem etzlacha. So he says to me, I said to please God by you. So he says to me, Abba, ata kodem, like you're first, you're older than me, you get a head start. And that was real musa for me. So I started Daf Yomi when Daf Yomi started, and hopefully my son's blessing will take effect, and then also my blessing will take effect on him. So Rabbi Eliezer didn't like the words of his father, and he fasted. And he fasted and fasted and fasted for 2 weeks. I don't know exactly what that means. Is it possible for a person to fast for 2 weeks? But it said that he fasted for 2 weeks. And he had a Gilui Eliyahu HaNavi. Eliyahu HaNavi came to him. And Eliyahu said to him, Eliezer, why are you crying? We're still crying. So he said, I want to learn Torah. So Eliyahu HaNavi said to him, well, if you want to learn Torah, go up to Yavne, Kerem B'Yavne, to sit by Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai and learn Torah. And this is the exact era immediately after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, before Rabbi Gamliel was appointed as the Nasi. It was a couple of years where they were trying to make stability, trying to make takanas to enable Jewish life to continue without a Beit Hamikdash. And exactly in that very, very unique era, Eliezer came. And he came up to Rabbi, the Godel Ador. He walked right up to him. There weren't so many Talmidim, unfortunately. And he said to him, I want to learn Torah. He said to Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, said, why do you come? He said, I want to learn Torah. So he said to him, do you know Shema? And he said, no. And he said, do you know benching? And he said, no. So he said, well, I'll teach you those, and that will be good. So he started crying. And he says, why are you crying? He says, I want to learn all the Torah. So he says, okay, we'll start with this. So he started teaching him stage by stage. In the meantime, he started growing and growing and growing, learning 2 halachos a day. That's how he started, 2 halachos a day. I guess with no background, 20 years old, you have to start slowly and build yourself up. After a while, Hurkonus, who had no idea what happened to his son, found out that his son was in Yavne learning Torah. And he was very upset. And he said, I am going to be madir. I'm going to excommunicate him from all my property and give it to my other sons. And he went up to Yavne to find this rebel, Eliezer, who has left the family path of plowing the field in order to tell him that he's not going to get any of the Yerusha. And as he walks in, they tell Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai that the father of Eliezer has come. At this point, Eliezer has been there a while. He's become a Talmid Chacham. So Rabbi Eliezer was still humble and shy or embarrassed. And he didn't notice his father was there. He didn't know. and they were sitting and making a Yontuf de Rabbanon, which meant all the rabbis sit around and teach Torah and learn Torah with each other. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai turned to Rabbi Eliezer, perhaps for the first time, and said, Eliezer, stand on your feet and be Doresh. And Rabbi Eliezer said, I don't have anything of my own. All I have is just from you, which is where this idea of the Bor Sud comes from. I don't have anything unique to share. I only have my own Torah to teach. And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, well, maybe you're embarrassed because I'm here, meaning, and therefore you're saying you only have your own things to say, but really you do have unique, your Torah to share. So what if I leave the room? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai leaves the room, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Hulkan stands up, not knowing his father's there, and starts teaching Torah, his own unique Torah. And the Gemara says, the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says, that his face started shining like the sun, and people were blinded by the light of the sun from the Torah that he was teaching. And Hulkanus, who's sitting there in the crowd watching this, and he says, who's that? And they say, Eliezer ben Hulkanus. And then Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sneaks in and is listening to this great Torah that Eliezer ben Hulkanus is teaching. This gives us hope, by the way. If you just heard a story from me about someone who finished Or Shas by age 18, look, here's someone who started at age 28 and he still was able to become great. So if you are 18, 19, 20, you can just imagine yourself to start now and you can reach Siyam Shas in another few years. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai will kiss you on the forehead and he will say, Ashrei Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov sheben ze yatsa michalatzav. How fortunate is Avram Yitzchak Yaakov that this child came out of him. And Hulkanus stood up and he said, no. Ashrei Hulkanus sheben ze yatsa michalatzav. How fortunate am I that this child came from me. And then Rabbi Eliezer was very embarrassed and said, Abba, you're embarrassing me. And he says, no, let me tell you, I came here to be madir you for my property, but the opposite, I'm going to give all my possessions to you and I won't give anything to your brothers. And Rabbi Eliezer said to him, Abba, do you think I came here to get Yerusha? I'm not interested in any of the Yerusha. All I'm interested in Torah is Torah. And he started quoting a whole bunch of psukim, which show how Torah is the only thing which is valuable. And that was the beginning of Rabbi Eliezer's greatness. Wow. Later on, and we're not going to go into this whole story, later on there was a very, very big, famous, interesting debate between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua and other Chachamim, where the whole story of Lo B'Shamayim, where the carob tree moved and the river moved, and that's the same Rabbi Eliezer, who they then excommunicated. They then put him in Cherem, and he remained in a Cherem for the rest of his life. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hulkanus was so great in Torah that they were concerned that he would start a break in Torah where he wouldn't pasuk in the same way as the Sanhedrin. He was so great in Torah, they were worried that he would start his own faction, and he accepted it. He didn't back down. He said, I think the halacha is like me, and he continued doing the halacha like him, but he accepted the Cherem, but he wasn't willing to retract. And they would come and learn from him by standing Daled Amos away, so they wouldn't be within Daled Amos. A very amazing interaction. Eventually, when he died, they declared the Cherem has passed. Rabbi Akiva learned from Rabbi Eliezer ben Hulkanus. Meaning, our Rabbi Akiva, who all Kol HaTorah Kula came through, he received it from this Rabbi Eliezer ben Hulkanus. That is the greatness of Rabbi Eliezer ben Hulkanus was. Now, with all that in mind, we have to understand what is this praise that he's being given of a bor sud she'einu ma'abed tipa. I want to give it a little more depth than we normally understand. On a surface level, what it means is that if you have a regular pit which you put water in, then the water will seep through the walls. But if you plaster the walls, then the water won't be able to seep out. So this is an expression of someone who never forgot anything. Someone who never forgot anything. And that's a praise, they never forgot anything. Now, this brings us to a big question. If he was a genius, like my cousin in Ofakim, and he's able to remember everything, then that's not something which is relevant to us, because that's something which was amazing that he had a photographic memory. Yafeh me'od, kol hakavod lo. He was able to memorize everything that was taught, like a bor sid, that he was able to absorb everything. But going back to our earlier question, why is it relevant that the Mishnah tell us that? It's not relevant to us. Everything that is in Pirkei Avos is a lesson for all time. It's a lesson for the future. So it's true really for all of them, but this is like the biggest example. If someone's praises, they have a good memory, a photographic memory, that's the big praise we have for them. Why do we need to teach that? And let's go back to the word moneh for a minute, and we'll try and use that to answer. What is counting? There's two ways of counting. There's a non-Jewish way of counting, and there's a Jewish way of counting. A non-Jewish way of counting is, you have a lot of individual things here. You want to know how many there are. Instead of calling them all the blue one and the red one and the blue one with red squiggles, and it's going to take a long time and you won't even realize how to put them all together. You say 1, 2, 3, 4, and that way you, in a sense, dehumanize them, or whatever they are, them, because they've lost their individual credit. It's a very convenient way for you to count. Are you allowed to count Jews? You're not allowed to count Jews by numbers, because Jews never lose their individuality. Even when we say that we're moneh, we're counting, when it comes to Am Yisrael, we never count the Jewish people by numbers, because that would take away their individuality. Rather, the way that we count Jews is that we, at the same time, hold on to their individuality, but we also recognize how they're relevant to the klal. This is a very different way of counting. Way number one of counting is that each one has a number, and when you get to the end, you have a big number. Lots and lots and lots of individual, irrelevant numbers. I don't care who's 1 and who's 45. You could switch that around. You can make 45 1 and 145. All I care is how many are here. That's all that's important to me. Put them all together. What's unique about him or unique about him, I don't really care. Counting people in Judaism is where you have this individual, this individual, and that individual. And when you put them all together, you don't have a bunch of individuals. You have a sum which is much, much greater than the parts. It becomes Klal Yisrael. So a lot of Goyim together are a lot of Goyim. But a lot of Jews together become the place where the Shekhinah dwells. We become much greater than the individual parts. And this is what the word moneh refers to. Moneh, when we talk about counting Jews, we're not listing them 1, 2, 3, 4. Rather, we're looking at the unique quality of each one, but that wouldn't mean they're separate. We don't want to do that either. And then you put all those parts together and you see how the unique quality of each one works together to make it a klal. Are you with me so far? I'll give a mashal, but it's not such a good mashal, but you'll go with me on this. If you have an army, then in the army, you have different people doing different jobs. You have people who are flying planes, you have people who are in tanks, you have people who cook and who drive trucks, all different roles. However, each of them, if they would all do the same role, it would be a pathetic army. If everyone in the army was a cook, then it would be a wonderful restaurant. But what's the purpose of it all? And if everyone in the army were fighters, then they would be very hungry after 2 days. So we need everyone to have unique roles and do their roles, but they're not doing their roles separate from each other. They all realize they're part of a greater klal. They're part of the army defending the Jewish nation. And when each of them have their unique role, whilst recognizing they're part of the bigger picture, that's what moneh refers to. And that's how we count Jews. Everyone has something unique individually. But when you put all those unique individual parts all together, then you have a much bigger picture. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, that's answering what the word moneh is. Now, what is the first question that we asked? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, this is only Talmidim. You only had 5 Talmidim. But what we can explain now is a deeper understanding. Of course, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had many, many, many more Talmidim than these 5. But these 5 represented, if you put all 5 together, they have the Shleimus Ha'adam. They have, if you take each of them and you recognize what's unique about them and put them all together, you have the ideal form of what one man, from a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, is supposed to be. What's called Shleimus. None of them had Shleimus by themselves, but all together they had Shleimus. And you can see this idea very beautifully by the introduction, which I left out today, but we said it last time. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Kibel mi Hillel v'Shammai. That's how it started, this Mishnah. Meaning, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was someone who he was able to contain Shleimus within him. Hillel and Shammai represent 2 opposing forces. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was an individual who was able to bring down the teachings of Hillel and Shammai and contain them all within himself. So he was an individual who had Shleimus. That's why he was able to enable Am Yisrael to continue. Because when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, you need someone who represents Shleimus to enable that Jewish nation to continue in Galus. Hillel and Shammai were separate. It came through Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and then he had 5 Talmidim. If you take the teachings of these 5 Talmidim, which we're going to learn in the next few weeks, that's what's going to be the next few Mishnayos, where each of these 5 Talmidim say there are 3 points they have to make. And you recognize what's unique about him, and you put those all together, and just like Hillel and Shammai were all made shleimus in Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, so too if you take these 5 Talmidim which emanate out of him, you will have the shleimus Adam. And that's very useful for us, because when you see someone who's perfect, like my cousin making a siyum shas in Ofakim, then it's very hard for you to relate to that, because you say, well, it's just too perfect. But once you break it all down, and you say, what is perfection made up of? Oh, this aspect, then it's tangible. I'll give you an example. When I was learning to be a mohel, then you have to follow you first learn all the halachas, and then you have to follow someone around and you watch him do it. So I was zocher to learn by one of the best mohelim in Eretz Yisrael. He's the one who gives smicha to all the other mohelim in the country. His name, he lives in Rehovot. And by Seder Shmaya, I got attached to him, and for free, which is a neis gamor. And I was following him around doing shimush, watching him. So he said to me, okay, watch carefully. And then he did the bridge. He says, how was it? I said, it was good, but not so helpful. So he said, why good? I said, well, you're so professional. You do it so quickly that I didn't get to see anything that was going on. It was just over in a second that you started. So he said, zeh chochma be'emet. I said, what does that mean, zeh chochma? And it was very not good to learn from him in that respect, because he was so perfect in what he did. There was no stages of me recognizing anything that was going on. But what I was fortunate was, he had a Talmud who had learned by him many years ago, but they'd remained good friends, and who still accompanied him with all his brisses. And that Talmud would pull me aside and say, notice that, notice this, notice that. And then when I was able to watch him, I was able to see much more things that I wouldn't have paid attention to by myself, but I didn't know what to look out for by this perfect mohel. So when you have someone like Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai, who's perfect, and he's got all the shleimus within him, it's not so useful for us, because it's just too above us. But once you have it expressed in his 5 Talmidim, it's like breaking it down, unpacking what shleimus is made up of. So what we're going to see over the next few weeks, within each of these Talmidim, is the unique aspect of shleimus emphasized by Rabbi Yochanan, by Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, v'chule. Okay, let's go through our questions. Question number 1, why does it mention 5 Talmidim? We just answered that. That's the shleimus of what made up who Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was. Question number 2, why does it use the word moneh? We now understand there's a deeper understanding of what counting is. If you have that deeper understanding where you have each one has individuality, when you put all those parts together, you get a bigger picture of shleimus you can understand. Why was he b'chalal praising them? And this is the question we haven't yet answered. Why was he praising them? What was the purpose of his praising? And here I want to give a very important message. I saw this message in the Maharam Shik's commentary on Pirkei Avos. And this is an amazing insight. I feel this is the main message I want to teach in this session today. But Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue with this Mishnah. The Maharam Shik says, there's no way that Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus was naturally gifted in having a good memory. Because then there's no praise there. That's just the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made him. There's no way that Rabbi Yossi Cohen was naturally a Chosid. There's no way that Rabbi Shimon ben Atana was naturally Yerachet. There's no way that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach was naturally a Mayana Mitkaber. All those things weren't natural to them. And that's why you can praise. You can only praise someone who, with a lot of effort, with a lot of amelus put in. So what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has come to tell us for all generations, and this is the message of this Mishnah and Pirkei Avos, or part of it, is all these things, even if they seem foreign to you, even if having a good memory seems foreign to you, even if being a level of a chosid seems way above you, even we haven't explained what Rabbi Shimon Chananya is of Asher Yalato, put that one on hold. Even if all these ideas of renewal of Mayana Mitkaber seem foreign to you, they were also foreign to these people. But they worked very, very, very hard. And with a lot of amelus, you can accomplish a level. And that's why I told the story of who Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus was, because it wasn't natural to him. It wasn't at all natural to him, but he had a lot of amelus. He was crying and crying over the opportunity to learn Torah. And when he came, like we learned, he didn't know Shema, he didn't know Birkas Hamazon, and they could only teach him 2 Mishnayos a day. You see that it wasn't something that was natural to him. It was a very slow process that he was learning in. But with a lot of effort, a lot of amelus, he was able to do that. Now, you might think that if everyone puts in effort, they get to the same place. But they didn't. Look, they all put in effort and got to different places. And here's a deeper level of our understanding of what the message of this mission is. And this point is from the Sforno. The point of the Maharam Shik is, the reason they're being praised is to show you that it wasn't natural to them. You put in effort and you can get to this level. And therefore, we too are being encouraged and enthused to put an effort towards these things that these Talmidim reached. What the Sforno adds is amazing, is that you won't necessarily get to the same place as someone else by putting an effort. Everyone has a natural tendency of, if they put an effort, where they're likely to get to. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, through him putting an effort, he got to be what we'll call later a Sinai. Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, when he put an effort, he got to be what we call an Oker Harim, two very opposing paths and methods in Talmud Torah. So you see that the fact that you are inclined one way doesn't mean it's natural to you. You're still going to have to put in a lot of amelus to get to the person who you could become. But it's inbuilt within you. You'll put an effort and you'll become someone not the same as him. And therefore it's irrelevant and foolish to look at someone else and say, I want to be like him. I'll put an effort to be like him. That's foolish. Because if you put an effort, you'll be like you. You'll be the ideal you. You won't be like him. You'll be your ideal self. And that's a message, which is the initial message of why it's telling us the praises. You should never assume that what you are now is your level. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was told that by his father. What you are now is your level. Maybe your children will have more hope than you. Don't believe that. Never believe the people who say it can't be done. Let them say it can't be done and they'll be stuck in their rut, and you go and do it. You go and work. All those naysayers will be a surprise. Oh, look at that. He was a miracle. The miracle was that I didn't listen to you. That was the miracle. Don't say it can't be done. I can do it. Put in ishtadlus. When you put an effort, where does that take you to? I don't know where it'll take you to. Everyone is very unique. All these 5 Talmidim, they put an effort according to their unique way, and they ended up in different places. You put an ishtadlus in your area, and you will end up what's uniquely special for you. This is something which I'm happy and sad about at the same time, maybe disappointed a little bit. My mother was very, very, very talented musically. And she took 4 or 5 different instruments to concert level. I am also talented musically, but I never developed the skill. I can see that when I try and play, it goes very smooth. But I never sat down with a teacher and learned how to play. So the same koach that I potentially have within me, like my mother had, she invested in it tremendously and reached a very high level within music. And I have it in theory, but I haven't developed it. Now, I have a reason why I haven't developed it, because I'm trying to develop other things. So maybe it's worthwhile what I'm trying to do. But you see there, sometimes you have a koach, which was within you, which doesn't mean it's natural. Meaning, it doesn't mean that it will come to you without effort. It may be that you're naturally built a certain way, but you still have to put in tremendous amounts of effort to accomplish who you are. But then you also have to be real with who you are and not try to put an effort to be somebody else. That's the initial message of our Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus was the first person that we taught. And I'll just say one more point on him, and at least we can conclude who he was. We said a kind of a contradiction within Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, that on the one hand, we said that he only ever accomplished what his Rebbe taught him. A bor sud she'eino ma'abed tzipah means that he had from his Rebbe, but he never taught anything else beyond what his Rebbe taught him. That's what he thought. But then we also said that when his Rebbe left the room, he was suddenly able to say things which he hadn't heard from his Rebbe. So where did they come from? If his praise is someone who only absorbs what he has from his Rebbe, how could it be that he had more than what his Rebbe had? Now this is a little bit deep. It's based on the Maharal, but it's well worth hearing. How do people remember things? There's 2 different ways to remember something. One way you remember something is you repeat it many, 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 many times. And anyone who's done any sort of SAT or A-level, you'll be familiar with this and maybe not enjoy it so much. And the proof that you don't enjoy it is that the moment that it's over, you don't say, let me go and do one more chazorah just to make sure that I know it really, really well the day after the test. No, no, no. You take your books, and if you're a nice, well-mannered individual, you'll recycle them. Otherwise, you may burn them. That's the option of what you do after you've finished your exams, because it's over and I'm happy that it's over. So that's memorizing something external. So external information isn't natural to you. So you have to force it in by saying it again, then again, then again, then again, then again, that it will remain within you just until you write the answer on the test and free. And you let it go back to being external because it wasn't natural to you. That's one type of memory. There's another type of memory where you have something which is your essence. It's who you are. You don't need something external to force it in you. because it's so basic to who you are that when you experience it, you'll remember it for life because it's who you are. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you've ever been looking for an answer for something which you thought of the question and it really bothered you, this question, and you were looking for the answer and looking for the answer, and after a lot of depth and a lot of thought, you get the answer. Or even if someone else tells you the answer, but it was exactly what you were thinking of for a long time, you won't forget that answer. The answer has become part of your essence because you are researching and you are looking and you feel that it's your chelek. It's who you are. It's your chelek. That might not be true if someone else gave you an assignment, but it will be true if it's something which you uniquely were bothered by and you were researching. And you know what's interesting about it is you may forget later on the words that were used or the details of how it was said, but the fact there was a resolution, that you'll never forget because you know it was resolved. And if someone will later on come and ask you that same question, you might not even remember the words that you used to answer it the first time, but it won't bother you because you remember in an innate way. In an innate way, you remember that you haven't answered that question. So hear what I'm saying well. It's not about the words because the words are external, but the concept which you've had resolved, you'll remember so deeply that you won't be able to be shaken by it. Now, when you learn, there's two ways of learning Torah. There's an external way and a pnimi way, an inherent way, an essence way. The external way is where the truth is that this question doesn't really bother me and that this Gemara doesn't really interest me, but I'm an Eved Ne'eman LaHashem. I believe this is the will of Hashem for me to learn this, so I will learn it. So I'll sit down and I'll read the words and I'm happy. I'm not going to burn the Gemara when I finished. I'm very happy that I did the will of Hashem, that I read the Gemara and that I understood it. And I'm going to have to do a lot of chazara to force myself to make sure that I remember it. That's one way of learning. And it's a good starting point. That's the way that an Eved would need to learn. When you get to the place where this is so important to you, that you feel this is your essence. And that was Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkunas. He came to the place where he wanted to learn Torah so much that he wasn't able to eat. In a sense, he was saying, my life depends on this. This is who I am. This is the essence of who I am. It wasn't something external to him. It was his essence. Then when he came to learn, it wasn't about remembering this information or remembering that information. So actually, it's not necessarily saying here that he had a photographic memory. That wouldn't be a praise. That would be God's gift to him. It's saying something here which he developed through Amelus. And what did he develop through Amelus? He developed a deep, deep need to hear the word of Hashem, to hear what Hashem is saying to him. Lamashal, when he was learning, he didn't hear his Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai teaching him Torah. He heard Devar Hashem coming through his Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, and he was seeking to come close to Hashem. And if he was able to hear the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming to him and saying these words to him, this is something that you can develop. You can develop a yearning for Hashem, a thirsting for Hashem. The way that you do that is you contemplate, what do I have in my life right now and what's it worth? And it could even include Torah. What's the Torah worth for me now? Why do I do it? What's the point of it? And if you do it very well, you'll come to a point where you'll realize that nothing is worth anything for you, bichlal. It's all external. You may think of, I want a good shidduch, or I want a good parnasa. And when you think deeply, all those things will be, but what do I want that for? What do I want that for? You'll get to a place where it's a danger zone, because if you don't find a good answer, then you could fall off the brink. However, at that point, you could recognize who you are deeply. And deeply, 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 at that point, you'll recognize that I am that point where I connect to Hashem. There's nothing else in me worth anything in this world for anything other than my connection with Hashem. And that's a point of infinity. And you can only reach that point of infinity when you've looked at all the finite things and you've seen that none of them really resolve who you are. None of them, you give me all the money, it's not worth it. Like Rabbi Eliezer said to his father, you'll reach a point through, and this takes a lot of contemplation, where, because you might say it, but you'll think, yeah, but really if I had money, I'd be happy. And then you say, but why would I be happy? What would I get from that? You have to do a lot of thought process to get to this point. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkunas got to that point, where he realized there was nothing in the world worth anything to him other than hearing the word of Hashem. Then, when he heard Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai teaching, he wasn't just hearing Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's words. He was hearing the word of Hashem coming through Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And once you hear that, then it's even more than just the words that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said. So it wasn't that he was just remembering verbatim word by word what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was teaching, but he heard the sod. He heard the underlying principle. He heard the word of Hashem that was coming through. So when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai stepped outside the room and he started teaching his own Torah, what he was teaching wasn't more than what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught him. It was the principles that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught him. It all emanated from there. But he was able to expound on it much greater because he was able to go back to the source of where those words came from as if he was standing on Mount Sinai. There's a famous line in, it's famous. There's a line in the Alei Shor where he quotes Rabbi Yisrael Salanta. And this is how I love this line. I love this line. He said like this. He said, how do you learn the first Mishnah in Bava Metzia? This is how you learn it. That's the wrong way to learn the Mishnah. What's the right way to learn the Mishnah? Listen carefully. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer Yachloku. We sometimes forget about Hashem in this whole picture. We're learning Torah, and it's like the first level of learning where remember this information, memorize this fact, memorize that. Okay, what were the 3 principles of, and what were the 4 things of, and what were the 7 principles of, and it just becomes very external. And it becomes like any other limud of other things where it's not you, it's not your essence of who you are. But when you're learning Torah, and you're thinking to yourself, this is the word of Hashem. It's important enough to you, and you've reached a place within you where you're seeking Hashem, Dirshu Hashem v'himatzah. Then when you learn the words of that Torah, then you'll remember it not because it's something external to you, because you had to memorize some list, because this is my life. This is the essence of who I am. So to summarize everything we said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was Shleimus. He has 5 Talmidim together represent Shleimus. He's enlisting their Shvachim to teach us a principle, which is that we can accomplish all the things these Talmidim accomplished. Maybe not exactly like them. Maybe we'll put in a lot of amelus and we'll end up being who we uniquely are and not try and copy who they are. Any good artist or a performer, if he tries and copies other people, he'll only ever be second rate to them. But if he tries to be his best self, then he'll be better than all of them because he's his unique self in the best way possible. And that was what the Sforno was teaching. That's the message of this Mishnah. You have to put in tremendous amelus and then you become who you are. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Hurkus was the first example of that, and Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach we will continue in the following days. Have a good evening.